April is about more than compliance. Why the next few weeks will shape how work feels for your people. There are certain points in the year that quietly place more pressure on organizations than they first appear to. The move from March into April is one of them. On the surface, it can look like a familiar seasonal shift. The clocks change. Easter approaches. Payroll teams prepare for statutory increases. HR teams check policy updates and reporting deadlines. Managers keep one eye on rotas and the other on service levels. But this year, the move into April carries more weight than usual, because this is not simply a month of administrative updates. It is a moment when legal change, operational pressure, and employee expectations collide. And when that happens, the real question is not whether the business knows what has changed. It is whether the business is ready to live those changes well. That is where HR earns its place. Not in issuing another policy note, not in circulating a legal summary, but in helping the organization translate change into something people can actually understand, apply, and experience fairly. In hospitality especially, that matters. Nothing sits quietly in the background for long. If a pay rate changes, people notice. If a leave entitlement changes, questions come quickly. If a manager is uncertain, the team feels it immediately. And if systems, processes, and leadership are not aligned, even well-intentioned organizations can create frustration without ever meaning to. That is why the next few weeks deserve attention. Not because they are dramatic, but because they are formative. This is not one change. It is a stack of changes. What makes this period more demanding is not any single update in itself. It is the fact that so many things are arriving together, each with a slightly different impact. From 6th April 2026, key provisions of the Employment Rights Act 2025 are expected to come into force. Some relate directly to family leave. Others affect sickness absence, collective consultation, whistleblowing protections, holiday records, union recognition, and future equality action planning. On 7th April 2026, the Fair Work Agency is also expected to come into effect as a new enforcement body with significant powers. Alongside that, there are the annual changes organisations already need to manage. National minimum wage and national living wage rates increase. Statutory payments increase. Gender pay gap reporting remains an important focus for larger employers. Easter bank holidays create practical challenges for staffing and support. The clock change can create confusion for overnight teams. For some organisations, April also brings fresh questions about labour supply chains and umbrella company arrangements. None of that is minor. What stands out to me is that many of these changes point in the same direction. They signal a workplace environment where access to rights begins earlier, compliance expectations are tighter, record-keeping matters more, and enforcement is becoming more visible. In simple terms, the margin for error is becoming smaller. That does not mean employers should panic, but it does mean this is not the moment to assume people will work it out as they go. The biggest shift is not legal, it is cultural. It would be easy to treat this as a legal update issue. Read the briefings, amend the policy, tell payroll, move on. But that would miss the more important story. The real shift here is cultural. Take day one rights, for example. From April 6th, paternity leave and unpaid parental leave become day one rights. On paper, that is a change in eligibility. In practice, it changes the tone of the employment relationship from the moment someone joins. For years, many workplace rights have been framed in terms of service. Stay long enough, and certain things become available to you. Now, some of those assumptions are changing. The message is increasingly that fair access should begin earlier. That alters expectations, manager behaviour, and employee perceptions in ways that are far broader than the legislation itself. The same is true of statutory sick pay. Moving to day one entitlement, removing the lower earnings limit, and introducing a new approach for lower earners are significant practical reforms. But beyond the calculations lies a deeper message. Illness is being treated with greater immediacy. Entitlement is being extended. The system is being adjusted to capture people who may previously have fallen outside it. Again, that is not just administrative. It changes how absence is experienced by the workforce and how leaders manage it. Whistleblowing protections moving more clearly into the sexual harassment space also signals something important. Organizations are being told more explicitly that concerns of this nature must be treated seriously, handled properly, and protected appropriately. That will require some employers to look hard at whether their internal processes genuinely align, or whether their anti-harassment work and whistleblowing procedures still sit too far apart in practice. Then there is the Fair Work Agency. Even the creation of a recognizable enforcement body carries cultural weight. It tells employers and employees alike that compliance is not just a matter of private interpretation. There is a growing infrastructure around enforcement, recovery, and accountability. What does this mean on the ground? This is where things become real. Because the challenge for most organizations is not a lack of intelligence or intent. It is translation. A policy can be legally accurate and still create confusion in practice. A manager can be supportive and still responding consistently if they are not clear on the rules. Payroll can be diligent and still miss a crucial detail if system changes are not fully understood. And an HR team can be technically correct while still leaving line managers underprepared for the conversations they are about to have. I have seen this happen in many forms over the years. A change is communicated centrally, but not really landed locally. A manager reads the summary, but still hesitates when a team member asks a direct question. A new rate is known in theory, but not checked closely enough in the first payroll cycle. An entitlement changes, but the practical scenarios surrounding it are not discussed. A grievance or complaint is raised, and the organization suddenly realizes that two internal policies point in slightly different directions. None of these things usually comes from bad intent. They come from pace, from assumption, from the hope that one communication will do the job, from the belief that if something has been issued, it has been embedded. It rarely works that way. In hospitality, this becomes even more visible because everything is live. Managers are leading people while solving problems in real time. Teams are already carrying the weight of occupancy, guest expectations, and fluctuating demand. Shift-based environments leave little room for vague interpretation. People need to know what applies, what to do, and whom to ask. That is why this period matters so much. It quickly exposes the gap between policy and practice, the areas leaders should be focusing on. Now for me, the most useful response is not to try to do everything at once. It is to focus attention on where the business is most likely to wobble. There are 5 areas that deserve immediate thought. 1. Manager confidence. This is the first pressure point in almost every organization. Managers do not need a legal lecture. They need practical confidence. They need to know what has changed, what is different from before, what questions they may be asked, and where to go if they are unsure. If managers are not confident, the organization will quickly feel inconsistent. 2. Payroll accuracy. This sounds obvious, but it is always one of the biggest trust markers. If wages, statutory rates, or sick pay calculations are wrong, the issue becomes personal immediately. Even where mistakes are corrected quickly, the initial damage to confidence can linger. This is especially important where there are lower paid workers, variable hours, younger workers, or employees whose entitlement may have been affected by the removal of the lower earnings limit for SSP. 3. Absence and leave handling. The shift to Day 1 rights and the change to SSP will create real-life scenarios straight away. New starters may raise questions about family leave earlier than before. Employees may expect sickness support from the first day. Managers will need clear guidance on how to respond compassionately and correctly. 4. Record keeping and process discipline. The new requirements around annual leave and holiday pay records are a reminder that good intent is not enough. employers need to be able to show their workings. In practice, that means taking a closer look at how leave, carried forward entitlements, holiday pay elements, and payments in lieu are tracked and stored. A simple way to frame the response. If I were advising a leadership team this week, I would keep it grounded in 3 questions. 1. What has changed that our people will feel immediately? This includes pay, sickness absence, leave entitlement, and manager responses. 2. Where are we most vulnerable to inconsistency? Usually this sits with the line manager's interpretation, not the policy wording.